Hello, my name's Deborah and I live in Brighton. I've lived here since 1986 when I moved down from South London, which is where I'm from. I work at the University of Brighton and also for the Open University. I'm a lecturer in education. I have a daughter who's 23 and I came out probably when I was in my very early 30s, probably 32 or 33, and at the time I was married to a man and we were married for 10 years. Oh, and I play in, one of the things I do is I play in a ukulele band, which I absolutely love, called Ukulele. Like us on Facebook. And yeah, and I'm in lots of different groups, book group and veg group, and I like cooking as well. I do a lot of cooking. And I absolutely, one of my favourite things is fashion. I love fashion and I love clothes. I think I would like them to know how important music is to me and how important music has been all through my life. Not as a musician, because I've come very late to playing a musical instrument, but just how important it is and how much it shapes me. And that just because you get older, it doesn't mean that music isn't any less central to your life. I mean, it was since I was a teenager and it is now. For instance, when punk came out in 1976, I got rid of all my records, everything I had, because I believed that music, as I'd known it, was dead and everything was about punk. And now I just love all different kinds of music, and I like some of the stuff that the young people probably like as well as older things, you know, like Motown and a little bit of world music, country music, all sorts of music that you can dance to. And dancing and music is really important in my life. That's what I'd like them to know, that it doesn't stop just because you get older. I think maybe clubby stuff is a bit over-identified with being queer. That people think of, you know, banging house music and being gay, but it doesn't have to be. And I really love dancing, all different kinds of dance as well. And I met my partner at a dance class, and yeah, ballroom dance, tango, Latin, flamenco, lots of different types of dance I've done over the years. It's fabulous. What I'm curious about is I want to know what influences what you wear and how you dress. Now I know you're going to say, oh, we just wear whatever we want, but I wonder if you feel that because you identify as queer, does that mean that you belong to a tribe and that tribe has a certain way of dressing and a certain way of behaving and you have to conform with them? Or do you feel that if you went out with your mates and normally you wear trousers and DMs and you turned up in a big gold frock, how would they feel about that? I want to know how you feel in terms of your choice of appearance and how you dress and what you wear, and if you think that is a really free choice, be honest, or if you think that you do have a certain amount of queer peer pressure. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I'm Neil, I'm 43 years old. I'm a gay man who lives in Kemp Town. I've been with my partner for 5 years and we had a civil partnership 3 years ago on Monday. Before that I had a long-term relationship for 13 years as well. My partner's been married before to a woman and he's got 2 kids, 8 and 11, so we look after those on alternate weekends. I came out as a gay man when I was 23 to my parents. Didn't go particularly well and it was quite difficult for about 10 years after that. And I suppose one of the really interesting things, because it's actually improved enormously since then, I think when they've seen me in long-term relationships, it's been that they've really accepted it a lot more. And I think more recently they really love the idea they've got 2 grandchildren they never thought they'd ever have. So yes, that's me. when I was thinking about this, one of the things that really had a significant impact on me when I was very young, when I was in 20, I actually did some work for the Terence Higgins Trust. This is in 1990, when HIV and AIDS was very prevalent, and so I was quite young too, and I acted as a buddy volunteer, which was actually supporting people with HIV and AIDS during the period from their diagnosis through to at those stages to sort of quite an early death. And I think it's had a really profound impact on me. The first person I budded was somebody called Victor, and he was a 28-year-old man, and he was actually from Peru, and with an interesting story in that his dad was a general in the Peruvian army, and he'd come to London in order to sort of be able to live his a gay life. Very unfortunately, he then contracted HIV, and within 3 months that had progressed to AIDS. And as a buddy volunteer, I was placed with Victor, mainly because he was very isolated. He had one friend who was still in contact with him at that stage. And my role over I only knew Victor for 4 months, was actually to visit him in hospital to provide some I suppose support during a very difficult period. I suppose the profound impact it had on me, and I was only 20, was actually to watch someone die from HIV and AIDS in a period where there was lots of stigma attached to it. Victor was in an isolation ward, that I had to robe up to go and see him every time I went there. And for me it was just a really significant impact on my young life, really. I did meet Victor's father and mother when they flew over from Peru, and that sort of had a very big impact. Victor was sort of quite close to death at that stage, and I think it was the look of sort of sadness, confusion and probably disappointment on his father's face, and at that stage. Unfortunately Victor then did die. I went on to sort of buddy over the next 10 years about another 8 people, including men and women, and a further 3 people in that early stage did actually go on to die. So, but the great thing was as the medicines improved during that period, people did go on to sort of be able to treat their HIV status as a long-term condition. And I suppose for me, sort of that 10 years of my life had sort of a big impact. I suppose one of the things that's quite important for me when thinking about young people is really sort of nowadays it's sort of that period, that very important period about where gay people and lesbian women stepped in to support their community when it was an enormous amount of stigma. And I think one of the key things for me is that doesn't get lost, that it was a very important time as well as a very sad time, and that nowadays I think people would view HIV as just something that you can basically have you can go on a course of treatment if you've been exposed, a bit like morning after pill, and it's very important, I think, because that period actually I think did a lot to challenge stigma, and in a positive way that came out of it is that when you got pop bands and that sort of like getting together with their red ribbons, that actually I think that broke down a lot of barriers that have enabled us to have better rights and choices nowadays. So it isn't to preach to young people, I suppose it's to share some of those experiences and to say that a lot of people actually unfortunately lost out at that time, and that people like Victor aren't forgotten really. So that's important for me. So I think I'm fascinated really. I think that one of the key things for me was, when I was thinking about this, was my experience at school. And although I got bullied and everyone thought I was gay, I don't think I realised at that stage. But having sort of spoken to teacher friends and sort of aware that people come out at such a younger age nowadays, and what fascinates me is what type of issues that brings up when you're at school, about who you fancy, what you can do about that, who you take to the prom. And I think for me it's just really to understand some of the extra complications that probably there are now if you come out at a very young age. I only came out when I was 23 to my parents, so that would be really interested to sort of hear just about what that means and some of the issues and struggles that people have to go through to sort of be accepted at a very much younger age.
Well, my name is Susie. It's quite hard to talk about yourself, isn't it? I grew up in Liverpool, and Liverpool in the 50s, 60s, because I turned 60 this year, so that's when I was born in 1952. So it was one of those places where there was a lot going on, exciting things like the Beatles and all that sort of stuff, and they were very much part of our lives and part of the culture. And Liverpool's a place where there's a lot of humour and music and stuff, and so that's, I think, a lot of where I'm coming from. Despite leaving Liverpool when I was 18, 19 and going to live in Italy of all places, I think that's what I've carried with me, and I think that's what still is who I am. It's been a long journey to Brighton and to where I am now, and to living with my partner of 10 years, and thinking about retiring, and looking back over what it's meant to me to be a lesbian over the last 45 years, 40 odd years anyway. It's been very much about the people that I know and the people that I've met, and the community that I've lived in. It's very hard to know whether you are born a lesbian or whether it's just something that's, you know, is just part of your personality. And I've often thought about this, and I can only come to the conclusion that I'm a lesbian because the very first person I fell in love with was a woman, and that is what's, you know, that's just sort of gone on from there, and that's who I've fancied, and that's who I, you know, that's who I am, and so that's just become part of me. And it was never a particular choice, or it wasn't, you know, something I struggled with or had any anxiety about. It was just I fell in love, and continued to fall in love quite a lot for the following years, and I think that was, being lesbian was all part of being a woman in a time where it was exciting to see the world changing, because attitudes were changing towards women, and we were part of that movement. We were part of the women's liberation movement. We were feminists, and a lot of us were lesbians as well, and that was no surprise because we were doing things with loads of women. We were just in women's company a lot of the time, and it just felt natural. And we formed communities, we lived communally, we lived with our friends, we lived with our lovers, but we lived with, you know, we brought up children. You know, that was just part of a lifestyle which was to do with us being feminists, and to do with us being, and to do with me being a lesbian. I think I've always been careful about coming out, but being out and being myself and not trying to hide things. And, you know, I felt very freed by that idea, you know, and I've done things that I've wanted to do. You know, I had a big motorbike, you know, and I rode around on my big motorbike in my leather jacket, and you know, that was, you know, very butch, and it felt good. I felt liberated to be able to do that because I felt there were no boundaries on me. I wasn't being put in a box, you know, I'm a woman and therefore I can't do this or I can't do that. So yeah, I rode my motorbike, and I rode it across Europe and travelled, and, you know, just love that sense of freedom. And I think you should just, that's what you need to do. You can't put restrictions on yourself because of how society sees you, or the box that other people want to put you in. You know, you have to just break out of that and follow your dreams and follow your follow love, and that's, you know, that's the simplest thing I could say about it. I always wanted to be in a band, so as soon as I could, I joined the nearest band. and yeah, so for about 5 years I was in a band in Brighton in the 70s, and we were a punk feminist band.
What was your band called?
Bright Girls. And an early incarnation of the band was also called Devil's Dykes, because we were in Brighton, and it was the best name ever. Well, I'm really curious to know what it's like being lesbian, gay, transgender now. What a lot of the things that I lived through and fought around was so that we would have a voice and that we could live free from fear, that we created a community that was diverse, that and people's differences were acceptable and normal, and that there'd be a mutual respect between people. So I guess what I really want to know is have we had that effect? How do you feel? Do you, do you feel freer? Do you feel that you can be who you want to be? Can you live the life that you want to live? And you know, I know it's hard coming out, especially to parents. That's never going to change. But was that a positive experience? And you know, are you happy? Is it a good life? Are you free?
Okay. Well, I'm Marion, and I was born in July 1942, which was 3 years before the Second World War ended. I do have a memory of my mum and my grandpa running with me to the air raid shelter, and the sirens going off, so I was a war baby. More recently, I live in Brighton, and I've been here for quite a long time, and a group of us bought an old dilapidated house, and with quite a lot of land at the back, and we made it into flats, and we all sort of live there, and so we all know each other, and it's kind of semi-communal, and that's quite a nice way to live. What I remember most about the 40s and 50s, that it was a very rigid, kind of sexually repressive time, and there was a lot of inequality amongst men and women, and like the pay wasn't equal, for example. That's just one example. And also I remember seeing flat to rent which had posters, notices on them saying no Irish, no coloureds, no dogs, and somehow, without fully understanding why, it just all seemed wrong. There was racism and what we later called sexism as well. So it was a fine time to be in the 60s, because there was a change taking place, and I felt part of that. I was in the anti-war peace movement. Around about that time I was also aware that I was attracted to women, but there was no dialogue, there was no way of explaining that. I remember when we were at school, we'd looked up the word lesbian, and didn't even know how to spell it properly. We couldn't find it because we were spelling it wrong, So it was a difficult time. You didn't know what to do or where to go. And I went on staying in a relationship with my boyfriend because I didn't know what else to do. And that meant in the end that I was leading a kind of a double life. My boyfriend and others in my peer group, we were all anti-war people, all in the peace movement, and so I did a lot of stuff with them, and I was very fond of them all as well. But then I was leading a kind of a double life by going to clubs, when I could get away, and then I had a girlfriend, and I was basically kept her secret, and when I look back on that, it was a crazy thing to have to do, and I felt more and more uncomfortable about it, and also, not least, having a secret girlfriend and a boyfriend was bloody exhausting as well. I couldn't keep up with it, and it took a lot of time. And then in the 1970s, it was actually 1970, I was working for War Resisters International in King's Cross, and I suddenly overheard a conversation when a man had come back from New York, and he was talking about the Stonewall riots in 1969, and he also mentioned that 2 Englishmen were coming back to London, and were going to set up a gay liberation front, and I just felt compelled to go along to that meeting. It was, I'll never forget it actually, it was a kind of electricity surging through my body. I just knew that it was the right time to stand up and be counted and challenge what society thought of us, because certainly even in the 60s, people thought that, you know, queer people, which is what they called them then, or inverts, or nature's mistakes, that was another one. We had a lot of different names, you know, that we were called, and people thought that you were sick, perverted, and or that you had arrested development, that you need curing in some way. So it just seemed the right time to start up something like that, and that was a great time in my life. When I went along to that first meeting, there were only 5 women and about 80 or so men, and for the first time I felt like not only was it the right thing to do, but it was like your life was becoming integrated and more, it felt more wholesome rather than leading this awful double life, you know. So that was the beginning of the gay liberation movement, and of course that spread over the country, and I think Brighton was probably the second place where the gay liberation organisation happened. And I'd love to tell you about the first march, and it was a march, it wasn't a parade, that we travelled up and went down Oxford Street, and I'll never forget that first march. The onlookers, their faces were quite something. A lot of people just looked incredulous. There was a total incredulity in the way they looked, particularly if you didn't fit a stereotype of what they thought that queer people looked like. And I was one of those that didn't fit that stereotype, and so people could, you know, hardly believe that you were. And the other thing that I do remember is looks of disgust from other people, which was really, really upsetting. And some people called out, or, you know, called out horrible things, and a few of us got drinks cans lobbed at us. So if you compare that with the parades, pride parades now, you can imagine there's a hell of a lot of difference then between that first march and, you know, what we celebrate now. We also did do some spray painting on the Institute of Psychiatry, because as I said before at one point, that we were considered sick, and you know, that was a pretty awful thing to have to live with then. And society is very powerful. If institutions like psychiatrists say that, then people believe it. So we spray painted on the walls of the Institute of Psychiatry very late at night, "We're not sick," and we signed it with the Gay Liberation Front slogan. So what I'd love to know now is, how is it for young people now? And how do you feel about civil partnerships and marriage? Because in some ways those two issues about relationships and partnerships are inextricably linked. And of course, you know, nothing like that was in existence in my day. And lastly, you're the generation who are beginning to shape the next couple of decades in our lives and our society. And what you think and feel is incredibly important. It's of major importance in shaping the future. And finally, I wish you well, and with love and respect, Marion.
Right. Okay. Yes. Well, hello. I'm Tim, Gil's partner of we think 44 years. Yes. Which is some duration, from about the age of, well, perhaps 11, 12 onwards. Was that the year before I actually, you know, realised that I was gay. I remember a very famous court case in which I think he was a freelance journalist called Peter Wilderblood, and this was in 1953, and he had been caught, not, I think, importuning in a public place, but this was a private matter. He was caught and he was sentenced to 3 years hard labour. And that was the year before I realised that I was gay, and I've always remembered that particular moment. It's shocking how much the influences or the feelings of one's youth still percolate through.
It does indeed. You're always afraid. That
You're always afraid. Well, I mean, we entered into our civil partnership. I think it was just about 2 weeks after it was possible to. We did on Gail's birthday. So we got hitched up on the 5th of January 2006. And I think in one sense, I've got two kind of responses to the question. I mean, one is to say it hasn't made that much difference, because domestically and financially, the difference is minimal. I mean, we still live in exactly the same way as we did before 2006. But I think in other ways, it really has made a difference. That now, should either of us have to go into hospital, I mean, we are each other's next of kin. And and the hospital has to inform.
You wouldn't dare.
You have.
You have to pretend you were a relative or something.
Yes, well, I think possibly it's the same kind of question that we both have about whether you feel that coming out now and being gay and finding a fruitful relationship is any easier now than it was for us in the 1950s.
Fantastic.
Can I offer just one tiny little thing? I want to say that I'm now 79, and I've had better sex these last 9 years than ever before. So you too can add that. I just made it. It's true. I love it. I really do.
So you see, things are not lost when you reach the age of 26.
It's not downhill ever.
Hi, my name's Nika, and I don't live in Brighton, but I study here, and I've always lived, well, since about 11, I've always lived near Brighton. Probably since the age of 16, I have experienced like the queer side of Brighton. I was introduced to Allsorts, which is our youth group, when I was about 17, by one of my now best friends. She's like, come along! This was when I first met her at college. And the rest is history. Now, every Tuesday I come along to Allsorts, and we always hit Revenge Bar afterwards. Don't really go out anywhere else apart from Revenge and Revenge Bar, just because I'm not very adventurous. But other than that, the beach, the lanes, you can't really get me out of the lanes. I'm always browsing, even though I don't necessarily have money to spend in there. Those three elements are definitely the best parts of Brighton. And I don't feel obliged to dress in a certain way. Like one day I'll have my pink wellies on, and my beanie hat that's like a bear. Another day I might be in a 1940s frock. It's the way I roll. Yeah, I don't feel that wearing DMs and skinny jeans, even though I love DMs and skinny jeans, is what I wear every single day. So yeah, I think that sums it up. That I do believe there is a sort of queer tribe, but I don't feel like I follow it myself. I identify as pansexual, so hearts not parts is my favourite saying. It's basically bisexual, but bisexual makes it very sort of categorised, men and women. Yes, true, but I found myself attracted to trans people as well, so I think to include, it's more like it's the getting to know the person rather than the stereotypical male and female role that I'm generally attracted to. It's the person themselves, I think. Definitely, I feel like I could walk down the street holding somebody who was a woman, trans, man, like, I feel in Brighton anyway, not necessarily where I live in Crawley, but I feel like I could walk down the street and nobody would bat an eyelid. They might look at me, but they certainly wouldn't like chuck abuse at me. Not that I've experienced that. My friends have, but I haven't. I've never experienced, apart from the gay community itself, any homophobia or not trans, panphobia, if you like. I'm out at work. I'm out to my friends. I'm out to part of my family, not all of it. On the whole, day to day, I'm very comfortable being part of the LGBT community. And the other thing that annoys me is when I am getting to know another woman who is a lesbian or bisexual, generally a lesbian, who then, when I tell her that I'm pan, then turns away and walks off. That's happened like 3 times to me. I've been getting to know somebody, and as soon as the question is asked, "Are you gay?" "Yeah, I'm pan." They just turn away and walk away. So that's something that annoys me a lot when I'm out on the gay scene. On a day-to-day basis, I don't have to fight for many things. I think those who've come before us have fought for the world that we live in today. I don't have to fight for many things. And what I might have to fight for is things that everybody has to fight for, like being respected at work, or being respected by my family. You know, it's that sort of thing that I fight for on a daily basis, not to fight for the person I am, for my sexuality, for my gender. I don't have to fight for that. You lot have already fought for us, so thank you.
Hi, I'm Ben Hammond. I came out as gay last year when I was 20. I've known pretty much ever since I was 12, I reckon. Probably younger than that, looking back on things. I'm into comic books, heavy metal music, punk rock, movies, any kind of movie really, anything that kind of touches me, you know, deep inside, or makes me laugh or scares me. It's all good. Brighton is a really great place. There's no other way of saying it. I don't live here, but I wish I did. And there's so much stuff to do. There's so many friends I have here, and you can walk around and you can dress the way I dress here, and or even more extravagantly. You could be anyone you want. No one is going to mock you for it. I have never had any experience being mocked, you know, here dressed like this. Whereas in where I live, I'll get snarky comments like, "Oh, I didn't know it was Halloween," that kind of thing. You know, and people also accept you for, you know, being gay as well. Now, I can have a boyfriend, walk hand in hand with him, and no one's going to blink an eye, no one's going to give me hassle. It's just, it's a great place, and I've come to think of it as a second home over, you know, these past few years. I mean, you see a guy in a leather jacket and you think, you know, I don't think I'm like a tough guy, but some people might say that, but I'm not. I'm a big pussycat. But yeah, I guess it's kind of a shield against people, you know. But I realise it's making a statement as well. It's saying, here I am, you know, this is me. But as much as that, it's a wall against things. It's not leaving myself exposed, you know. It's a mask, it's a cloak, you know, like superheroes wear. I've always, even before I came out, I've always been a strong believer in gay rights, or rights of anyone for that matter. One thing I can't stand is bullying. It's something I'm very much against, and that's always been with me. I was very bullied for a very young age, and you know, it hasn't really stopped. But it's not as bad as it used to be, you know. But yeah, I believe that everyone has the right to choose who they love. Everyone's got the right to their own opinions, you know. But I think hateful opinions, you know, opinions that would hurt society and hurt other people, I think they need to be controlled. I think we have the right to marry who we want, and you know, I mean, I read something like, if you don't like gay marriage, don't get gay married. You know, it's there's nothing wrong with it. You know, all this crap about the sanctity of marriage, and it's like, you know, if there really was any concern about the sanctity of marriage, we'd be outlawing divorce, wouldn't we? youth crime in this country is quite a big statistic, but I just want you to know that we're not all like that, and we do appreciate all that you give us and your time and everything, and we appreciate all that you have given us, and without what you've done, we wouldn't have. You've paved the way for our generation, and thank you. You've fought the battles, and we've reaped the reward. So thank you, basically.
Yeah, my name's Justine. I'm 19. I've lived in Brighton for quite a while now. I like Brighton because it's diversity. You don't get any. It's not the type of town where you can walk down the street and you can wear whatever you want and you won't really get shouted at. Like, I could go out one day and be completely in all guys' clothes and no one about an island. Just like a guy could do the same thing. He could go out in a mini skirt and do what he wanted and not get people running down the street shouting. It's good in the way that it's diverse and it's a good town to party, I think. And you can feel free to party. Since I've come to Brighton, a lot of people have got to think about undercuts. Like, undercuts as in, like, it's a very, very gay thing to have. Vans. I don't think I know any lesbian that doesn't have a pair of Vans at all. That's definitely, I don't know any lesbian who doesn't have a pair of Vans. But apart from that, there's not really a set code, because you can get feminine lesbians here, you can get you can get manly, you can get butch, you can get all different types. But we all seem to be really well dressed. That's what I like about Brighton. Everyone looks really good in Brighton. No, I think it's quite easy to go out when you're younger now. Not necessarily so much for boys. It's a lot easier for girls to come out, especially at school. I think guys get a really hard time if they come out at school, but with the girls it's not, because I was bisexual in school because it was easier to come out as bisexual in school. It's just a lot easier to tell people that. But I mean, I didn't really have any problems. I got supported by I got supported by a lot of my friends, and you get the jokes and you get the people picking on you, but it's not as bad as what people would think what it used to be like. I can imagine it used to be really hard to come out. I think the marriage thing at the moment that's going on about can gay people be married in churches? I'm not bothered if gay people can or cannot be married in churches, and that sounds quite wrong, but love is love. I don't see love is being concealed in a bit of paper. I don't see that heterosexual people get married in the first place. I understand through religious views, but a lot of people get married when they're not religious in churches. I think if you love someone, a civil partnership is exactly the same as being married. If you love that person, you don't need a piece of paper or a ring to show them that.
Hiya, I'm Kayla Madison-McTeer. I am 21 and I'm a married female transsexual. I gender myself as a lesbian because obviously that's my sexual orientation. Even though some people would obviously in the straight world would notice to me that I'm just a guy dressed in female clothes, what could be classed as a drag queen. I'm not nothing like that. I'm whoever I am. You mean I identify as a lesbian as well as a trans person, and I dress as obviously as female as I can, but I've still got the tendency of starting into a tomboy version than what I am a girly girl. So I will have my moments that I want to wear a pair of leggings and a pair of shorts when going down the street, so a low cut top on, when it's obviously the hot weather. But other times I would rather put a pair of jeans on, a hoodie on, and walk down the street. I suppose in one sense it's whatever I feel comfortable in at that time of the day. Definitely putting itself up in the media, it's starting to get recognised that it's fine to be transgendered. There's still obviously people who are still against people being in different sexes and all of that, but you mean that's their choice. But you mean I feel happy that as a trans person that it's being more accepted in the media and people are slightly talking about it more. I mean, same as obviously the rest of the letters, what is L, G and B. I mean, everybody's talking about it now. I mean, it's not just a thing which is buried under a bit of mud and forgotten about. It's literally out there, full blown in the media and TV, whether it's newspapers, magazines, everyday reading. It's not something that would have been hidden back in their day, because obviously back in their day it wouldn't have been accepted. I think there's possible talks that I think from obviously looking at different videos from different trans people that you could have been committed to death if you came out as trans. But I mean, in this day and age, it's, oh, you're trans, right, fine. Maybe not want to know you. It's, oh, wicked, you're trans. Oh, wicked, thank you. You mean, really surprised. I've had it myself that you mean who are like complete, girls who are complete fully lesbians. You mean, and it's like the way they're like, oh, well, you're trans. It's like, yeah. It's like, why are you so surprised? And it's like, well, I've never met another trans, but I've never met a trans person. It's like, wow. And it makes me feel privileged that somebody's so interested in people who are the different genders and how they go through with it all. And I've had questions of like, oh, how do you go through this and how do you do this? And you sit there and explain it to them. That it's not just LGB. There is T in LGBT.
My name is Nina. I'm 20. I'm from Worthing and I've been coming to Allsorts for about 2 years now. Brighton was the first place that I felt comfortable to hold my girlfriend's hand in public. In Worthing I was always scared because there's a bit more chavvy presence and it's a bit more intimidating. I've had cars come past and honk and shout "dyke" out the window and that sort of nasty stuff, but in Brighton I felt really happy and you can see other gay couples walking around and it's much nicer. I haven't talked to many older LGBT people and it's really interesting seeing what they went through in their youth compared to mine, and I just really liked what they had to say and what they're doing now, because when you think of LGBT at the moment there isn't that many examples of older generations doing it because it's obviously quite a new thing, being open, and so I found it really helpful, like seeing what I could be like when I was their age. The main difference between their generation and my generation is that I think people are coming out much earlier because they feel safer with themselves coming out, and being LGBT is a lot more advertised. It's on telly, it's got magazines, there's gay clubs, it's not underground, it's not taboo, it's everyone's out. And I've had friends who've come out when they were 14, 15. I personally came out when I was 16. I waited until I left my high school before I came out because it was a girls' school, and there was a cringe crew at my girls' school, which was lesbian girls who made out of each other, and at this point it's like, if you're going out with someone it's a bit like, ooh, what's happening there, so it's very gossipy. And so being immature girls as they were labelled as the cringe crew, and I didn't really want to be in the cringe crew, so I waited till I came out of high school, which I'm kind of ashamed of because I should have stuck up for my LGBT, but I was still unsure, so I guess I couldn't put my neck out as much. And then I told my family. It's a big difference to how they would have told their family. I told my cousins first, and I told them over Facebook. I told them over Facebook. I was just like, please, don't treat me any different and all of this, but I have a girlfriend and all of this, and they were like, yeah, it's fine. My nan found a top saying no one knows I'm a lesbian, and that's how she found out. And then she laid it on my bed, face up, and I was just like, who's been in my room? And then she ignored me, well, not ignored me, avoided me for a few days, and then confronted me and asked me if that's how I felt. And I just sort of nodded my head and like was really ashamed, went really red, blushed, cried, and then she just gave me a hug. She wasn't happy about it, and she told me she wasn't happy about it, but she didn't want it rubbed in her face, she didn't want me to wear that top around her, but she was still loved me and still liked me for who I am, and so that was okay.
Hi, my name's Dean and I am 21. And what's good about Brighton is for us young people, is about the clubbing life and the shopping centres. I've been coming here for 5 years now, so I'm part of the furniture. And yeah, it's played a big part of my life, and I will never stop coming here until it's time to actually leave. When I'm not originally from West Sussex, I'm from Hampshire. I was in a special needs school in Hampshire, and me being the nice person I am, and I came out to everyone at school, and there were some bullies at school, and they kept on bullying me for my sexuality and everything, and I said, I've had enough, blah blah blah, to them face to face, and then they started. One of the teachers came over, stopped it all, and since that argument between us, I had to spend my break and lunch breaks inside, and not go out and play and nothing, because they thought I was the bad person, not them. And now I stick up for myself and everything.
Well, my name's Kieran, and with Brighton, it feels like to me that it's one of those places where it's like the freedom land. You can be yourself, you can be who you are in Brighton, and Brighton to me is a home away from home. It feels like I can actually be me. It feels like that I can actually be Kieran George. But I spend a lot of time in Brighton because I feel like I can come here, have some fun with my friends, and actually be who I am meant to be, and not what other people want me to be. So the fact that, like, yeah, I am in secondary school, and yes, it was hard to do what I did, to coming out to my friends, but in the end I didn't care, because I knew that I was supposed to be me. Every straight bloke expects me to hit on them, even though I don't hit on straight people because they're straight. They're not going to like me in that way. And it does really hurt that I can't have a straight friend just because they think I'm going to hit on them. And on the girl side, they always like, let me do your makeup, let me go shopping with you, let me do your hair, blah blah blah. And it's just, they expect us to be their like little Barbie dolls. And we're not that little figurine that you used to play with when you're 5. We are real people. We do have our own needs. If you want to know if I'm gay, ask me. I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of what I am. I am who I am. If you just want to know, just ask. I'm an open book. Coming out in school, I did do it at a very young sort of year group. I done it at like the end of year 7. So it was hard coming out. It was extremely hard. I was scared of what people would do. And in the end, the worst thing that they could do was put me down. I've been beaten, I've been bruised, I've been rubbish thrown at me. I've been called everything under the sun. And yet I'm still here. And it just isn't right for people to put us down just because we're different. Just because you're different doesn't mean you're weird. It just shows you're happy. People are still scared of change. People are still scared of what's going to happen if gays take over. But yeah, but the thing is, it's that we're not a race. We're not like we're not coming over on ships to destroy the homeland. We're not here to take over like a bunch of aliens. We're just people. that have a different way of life and have a different way of looking at relationships. With the older generation, they have done a lot for us. And I want to thank them for that. The fact that they worked so hard and so constantly to make our lives just that little bit easier is amazing. And everyone who's like in their sort of like mid-ages, sort of getting a little bit to the older side, they should be applauded. There should be a parade for them, because they've worked so hard just for us to be happy.
Well, hello. I'm Greg. I'm 17. I'm Vice President of Allsorts here. I'm a student at college. I study physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, and pre-U, which is run by Cambridge, which is kind of how to write papers and stuff like that. I don't live in Brighton, but I visit it quite a lot. I'm down here every Tuesday, occasionally at any other time as well. Great shopping facilities. My experience in Brighton has been kind of fairly good, actually. It's a good community. There's a lot of young people. I haven't been to any of the bars or clubs because they won't let me in. Yeah, Allsorts is really important to me. It's kind of it's been my life, and I mean I've been through some rather hard times going into care and going through some rather nasty stuff, and it's been kind of the one constant. And I mean, it's really important to me, which is why I like to give back to it, and I like to kind of be involved in every project I can. When I came out, I was already being bullied for 2-3 years, horrendously. It had really affected my life and really affected my schoolwork. It still does. It really shook my confidence as well. So I'd made the decision that I was moving school. So when it came out that I was gay, it was 2 or 3 months before I moved to school. So I was only kind of in, but the time frame. The time frame didn't really allow it to progress. So I mean, I'm still being bullied pretty much the same as I was before, which is on an hourly basis. I mean, I had books thrown at me in Spanish, and which has given me incredible reflexes. I can duck and squeeze through a fence half my size. The older generation, and I mean, they were talking about fear and intolerance. And I mean, yeah, there's still fear, there's still intolerance. I mean, being gay is still kind of being seen as that person is gay, that person is different, that person is kind of separate from society. They don't merge in, they don't have the herd. But the older generation said about being limited in what they could be, and I don't feel limited. I feel, if anything, that I can go out and do things. I mean, I'm 17 and I'm vice president of here, which is amazing, brilliant. Going through hardship does something to a person's character. It makes them more compassionate, and I mean that's why I think the LGBT community is unique in its capability, because every person in the LGBT community has at one point come out, has at one point struggled with intolerance. They all have gone through very similar things, and that's what makes the community so tight-knit and so interwoven and so strong. And I mean, it's a brilliant community, and I'm very thankful for it.
I'm Josephine, also known as Jo. I'm 21 and I've just moved here from Sweden. And like my experience from Brighton is that it's really awesome, because like in Sweden it's like all conservative, but when I came here it's like rainbow flags all over, and it would never happen in Sweden. yeah, and it seems to be very open, and I never thought actually that I would experience such a city. I'm very interested and dedicated to gay rights and equality and human and animal liberation, because I think that everybody should like respect each other, and if they don't, I don't like, if someone treated someone badly in front of me, I would dare to say something, because I don't think it's like right. It was quite horrible actually, but because like I had a lot of friends, but then I came out and like all my friends disappeared except one, and my parents' reaction wasn't the best actually, but I don't really mind, because I don't feel like I'm supposed to be like moaning about it, because actually there is people out there that actually loves me for who I am, and if they like my old friends doesn't, so well, I don't mind. It's their problem, not mine. I think that before it was more like restricted, like those are butch, those are femmes, but I think it's like easing up at the moment, and like in Brighton it isn't any groups as I've seen, but I could be wrong, but I don't feel like it's any queer fashion here. You should be very proud, just because like everything that happened before, it wouldn't like be like, it wouldn't be as a place as it is now if it wasn't for you guys that actually fought for the rights earlier. So yeah, I'm just I just feel a lot of respect for you guys.
Hi, my name's Stephen. I've lived in Brighton for about 3.5 to 4 years now. I first came down for uni, so I went to Brighton Uni in 2009. And yeah, I've lived in Brighton ever since. I've finished my undergrad and I'm now doing my postgrad, because I can't leave Brighton, I'm attached to it. Yeah, I came to Brighton because it was an LGBT city. I was either going to go to Portsmouth or Brighton, because I thought it's got to be on the coast, and then I thought LGBT friendly. I mean, one of my favourite things about Brighton is living by the sea, because it's like this blue endless space where if you ever lose yourself, you just go to the beach and you see this massive blue space and you think, yes, I can be free here, because there is no limit to this city because it borders the sea. When I first came to Brighton, I think I experienced my first gay nightclub about like 3 weeks in. I went to Revenge, and it was really strange. I came from a farm town not knowing any other LGBT people, suddenly having a club that was advertising like, you, Stephen, this is where you can go. It's kind of like neon Hollywood lights. And it was quite strange actually, because they have, you know, people like, oh, are you a scene person, you're a non-scene person. And at first I was like, what is this scene, are we all acting? And yeah, I think that's one thing that people who are in cities with big LGBT spaces have to negotiate, and it's a weird thing. It's like Diagon Alley. Suddenly you tap 3 bricks and there's this whole other different world. And yeah, so I eventually decided I wasn't seen, which is cool. You know, there are some people who very are, and everyone's different. You know, there are people who love it, people who hate it, people who go it. And I do go to, oh, which one is it? Charles Street a lot, because that's nice and cosy. And I quite like it. But the lovely fact about Brighton is you've got so many spaces to choose from. And obviously it's not all about drinking. I'm very for gay cafes, queer, libraries, everything. So, and Brighton itself is, you know, just generally kind of queer. It's like bohemian, you know, it reminds me of the French Quarter in Moulin Rouge, you know, the lanes and just getting lost and wandering down all these side streets. It took me a while to kind of figure out non-scene places. And you do get, I think you get a wider, diverse range of people in non-scene. So, yeah, like, oh, who was it? Pink Fringe. I went to a couple of their events at Pride, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, there's all these crazy, different, beautiful people, and it's a lot less cookie cutter than what you'd see in like Gay Times or something. Because, you know, like when I was in my farm town, it's all, you know, the only thing you have is the internet, and on the internet, you know, you didn't really know what to search for, so you type in gay and all these kind of stereotypical images come up, and then you come to a city like Brighton and there's people who just throw those stereotypes out the window. And, you know, yeah, I experienced my first Pride this year, well, last year, 2012, which was a really great experience. I marched with Allsorts. We were 4th in the queue, and I would call it a march because I was chanting until my voice ran out, and it's think it's the loudest I've ever shouted. You know, the most people I've ever told I'm gay. You know, it's like a giant coming out. You're just like, I am Stephen, I'm holding up a sign and I'm LGBT. And it's really great, but it's just a really, you know, such a nice group identity to be marching with a bunch of people who identify the same as you. And that's why I think Prides are good, because they showcase, I think they should showcase more widely all the different LGBT identities, because everyone is different. I would probably like to know a few older queer people, because they're kind of a bit invisible, and there's always this myth that old people, because they're an older generation, are really, you know, homophobic or prejudiced, but I don't think that. National Coming Out Day, I think, was in February or October last year, and we were doing these workshops about who you were out to and who you'd want to be out to, and my only surviving grandparent is my granny, and I got myself all worked up. It took about a day, and I eventually rang my mum. I go, Mum, I want to come out to Granny. And it took ages to actually say that sentence. I was just ranting about random stuff. And she went, no, it's cool. She already knows and she's cool. So, you know, this Pride, probably have a big sign saying I didn't have to come out to my granny. She's already cool with it. So, I mean, obviously for older LGBT people, you guys are maybe out, maybe not. But I think it's an inspiration to young people because, you know, everyone gets old eventually, but for LGBT people sometimes it's a bit like, oh, what happens when I get old, you know? Will me and my partner stay together? Will we, you know, settle down in our lovely cottage and grandkids and stuff like that? So, stay strong, I think, is always my message to old LGBT people, and just keep loving life and giving your history down to others, because I think, you know, there's so many scenes and clubs and stuff that sometimes people miss the history, and LGBT history is really fascinating, especially in a city like Brighton. There's a lot of issues that are important to me, and you know, everyone's different, and I think there's a growing number of people who might just say, you know, being gay or queer or LGBT isn't part of my identity, you know, I just happen to sleep with men, but I'm firmly an activist, and I try very much to cultivate that spirit, because it's about knowing your history and standing up for people who can't stand up for yourselves, which is why I love all the outreach work that we do at Allsorts. And there's so much outreach work going on in the city, which is, you can really feel it in Brighton, that there are just so many people doing good and wishing to do good. And you know, and it's fair enough, some people can take that for granted. Some people are very happy just living out their lives, but I would always try to push people to stand up for those who don't have a voice for themselves. So yes, I fully support gay marriage and all of that jazz, and I've already planned out my wedding, so it's all good. I would like to be proposed to in a hot air balloon, because I think it's very romantic, and you have the sky and the sunset, and my first dance song, I want to be La Vie en Rose by Edith Piaf, because that's kind of how I see being gay. You see the world in a different shade, and for me, it's kind of pinky. You see the world in pink, and everything, you know, the reason I hold that identity so dear is because you do see this world in this kind of different, beautiful light, and it's like having goggles in front of your eyes, but the coolest kind.